Good evening, Rob. Thanks once again.
Great to be here.
For coming through. Now, these incestuous relationships, I mean, how did they cripple this company from what we know now coming out of this report?
Well, they allowed the company to essentially hide really poor profitability and create fictitious accounts that completely deceived investors. So we found out recently that there was 100 billion rand of fake profits included in Steinhoff's financials. And you have a board that's, certainly certain individuals were doing business with the company, and this allowed them to put through various things that just weren't true. I mean, you had a balance sheet, which is essentially your assets of the company, overinflated by 250 billion rand. I mean, that's how much was written off now. So it's, this kind of thing was done to allow them to get away with a lot of bad things.
But what was the aim? I mean, what were they trying to do? And more specifically, what were the benefits for your crystals, for your Marcuses?
Well, I think there were two reasons why companies do this kind of thing. Firstly, it's to make the profits look better than they really are, and make the company, it's part of the ego of the CEO, and makes the company look better, and allows the investors to trade in the company thinking it's great when it isn't. Secondly, there's personal benefits. For someone like Marcus Jooste, the CEO, there was personal money that he made from this thing. And the report last week talked about 33 million rand that he was paid ostensibly without too much approval from his own board. So there's personal fortunes to be made by doing this kind of thing, as well as burnishing the company's results to make it look better than it really is.
Well, of course, I mean, identifying these problems, irregularities, even fraud, is just one thing. What then the company is going to do about this body information that has now been laid bare is, of course, another. Were there discussions about sort of where to then?
Yeah. Well, the company is obviously trying to they now have a massive people claiming money from it based upon the fraud, and I think that figure is hundreds of billions. Christo Wiese himself has a 59 billion rand claim against the company. So that's on the corporate side. What you also have is accountability in the wider sense, which is the fact that the company has now referred 8 individuals to the Hawks for prosecution, and that's what really needs to happen. Chief among them, of course, is Marcus Jooste, who's now in Hermanus, living in his house in Hermanus, and seemingly untouchable if the Hawks continue about the merry way that they, the same trajectory they've shown the last couple of years.
I mean, take someone like Christo Wiese. I mean, is the company obliged to honor, whatever amounts of money he may still argue he is owed by the company or is due to him?
Well, the thing is, he's supposedly claiming 59 billion rand from the company. So as much as the company might want 5 billion rand from him, he just says, well, I have this legal claim of 5 billion against the company, so we'll settle all of this in litigation. So you have these long legal processes which drag out forever, and all they actually ultimately do is make lawyers richer, which we don't need. That's one thing we don't need in this society, is more, richer lawyers. And the shareholders will end up as the losers in this kind of thing. The shareholders, and I suppose the public, because a majority of South African pension funds had investments in Steinhoff, and it collapsed, and the share price lost 94% of its value, which ultimately hurt many pensioners in this country too.
What recourse do those people actually have if, a Christo Wiese can just say, okay, you owe me so much, and if you think I owe you this little, then you can always take that and then give me the rest. And as you say, Marcus Jooste is living in Hermanus having a good time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christo and Marcus's positions are very different, because I think Christo did not know about the fraud, as far as I'm aware. I mean, he certainly, the question is, should he have known what was going on? Should the board have known what was going on? But in terms of the 8 individuals flagged by Steinhoff to the Hawks, Christo Wiese wasn't one of them. But there is accountability in terms of claiming back money that was taken from the company without authorization, and that certainly is a process that will happen. I think, like we discussed, I think the public wants greater accountability in terms of individuals going to jail for this. And I think, given that it's South Africa's largest corporate scandal, it's essentially the equivalent of our Enron. People have to go to jail for this.
But I mean, given just how incestuous his relationships were, can a Christo Wiese, with all his experience, knowledge, and everything, get away with saying, I didn't know?
Well, it comes down to whether people actually did know. Christo Wiese, you seem skeptical, and I think a lot of people are skeptical, because he was the chair for a couple of years. at the time when this thing happened. But, his argument has always been that this was a complicated fraud conducted under our nose by certain individuals, and it also bypassed the regulators. The auditors also didn't know for a long period of time. Numerous lawyers checked over this and didn't see this. So his argument is ultimately, if it bypassed all these lawyers, if it bypassed all these banks, how was I supposed to know? I mean, I do think that there's a certain case to be made for the fact that the board should have known, should have done asked deeper questions about what was happening. Certainly, months before, in Germany, the German prosecutors, they went and they raided Steinhoff's head office for documents, and they said we're investigating accounting fraud here. And I think the board didn't act as quickly as they should have in that case. You seem skeptical.
I am, but that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Financial Mail editor Rob Rose.